Number 5. President Trump. This is probably the most famous prediction attributed to America's favorite family, and you gotta admit it's a little bit kooky, so let's just get it right out of the way so we can do the rest of the video. In the season 11 episode, Bart to the Future, we get a glimpse into one of the many possible future timelines for the Simpsons family. It's a pretty good episode. The family has a picnic disturbed and stops off at a nearby casino. Bart sneaks on in and is caught by the manager, who wants to show him a vision of his future if he keeps up his nefarious ways. It's pretty depressing. Bart grows up to be a loser slacker who's roommates with Ralph, and Lisa grows up to be president of the United States. And she's doing a pretty good job, managing with all the troubles left behind from President Trump. Wait, when did this episode air? 2000? 2000, okay, oof. Now obviously this episode gained a ton of notoriety and popularity after 2016, and I wonder why. All because of a throwaway joke. Obviously the creative team had to speak out on this one. Matt Groening, creator of The Simpsons, said that he never thought he'd actually become president. Dan Greeny, writer for the show and the writer of that joke in question, offered this in an interview saying, "It just seemed like the logical last stop before hitting bottom. It was pitched because it was consistent with the vision of America going insane." No comments. This prediction even gets referenced much later on in the series. An episode from season 28, airing 4 days after the inauguration, has Bart writing on the chalkboard, "It sucks being right sometimes," obviously alluding to the controversial president's election. Now you've probably seen an image passed around the net too of Trump descending an elevator looking exactly like a real picture of the 45th. Well, the Simpsons are good, but they're not that good. Now the first joke we mentioned is from 2000, but that picture that you've probably seen an uncle share on Facebook all the time is from a digital webisode from 2015, around the time the campaign was happening. So they only predicted it the once. And that's probably enough. Now, if you're a big Top 5 Scary fan, you know I love predictions. All the greats. Nostradamus, Baba Vanga, Homer Simpson. And I predict that you'll keep subscribing for scary videos hot and fresh every day. Let's keep on going. Number 4. Disney buying Fox. Well, maybe this one is only terrifying if you're afraid of corporate conglomerates. In the 1998 episode, When You Dish Upon a Star, through a series of contrivances, Homer crashes through the window of Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger, and ends up becoming friends with the stars, rubbing elbows with a few Hollywood alums, including Ron Howard, beloved Hollywood director and narrator from Arrested Development. Over the course of the episode, Homer desperately tries to get Ron to produce his screenplay, a masterpiece about a scary robot driving instructor that travels through time for some reason or another, and a talking pie that's the robot's best friend. Now all this is a bit of a preamble because the prediction comes right at the end of the episode, in a blink and you'll miss a joke. When Ron Howard does end up pitching Homer's script, we see a sign on the 20th Century Fox building that says a subdivision of the Walt Disney Company, a full 21 years before Fox would be absorbed into Disney. Now showrunner Al Jean tried to downplay this. When someone asked him about it, he said, "Predictions? I predict that people will make far too much of that mere coincidence." Which I guess he is, right? Because here I am, talking about it now to you. But if he predicted that, and he's right about that, then is he trying to downplay the other predictions? How did you know, Mr. Gene? Did a wizard do it? Now on another note, I think this is kind of funny, but if you want to watch The Simpsons online, you have to go to Disney Plus, since that's where the entire series is streaming. And on Disney Plus, there's a subcategory called Simpsons Predicts, which was very helpful for this episode. It's a playlist of all the episodes attributed to have a little soothsaying. All the episodes I mentioned are going to be on that list if you want to brush up after the video, including When You Dish Upon a Star. I think it's kind of a funny coincidence that they include an episode based on a 1-second frame predicting that Disney will buy Simpsons on their collection of things Simpsons predicted on their Disney website. Okay, I'm rambling like I'm Abe Simpson. Number 3, tobacco. Now like I was saying, I wore an onion on my belt, which was the style at the time. Oh, sorry, I'm still rambling. Our next prediction from The Simpsons is kind of a cheat because the person in question was directly inspired by the episode, but the context is terrifying and hilarious enough. In the season 11 episode, E.I.E.I. Annoyed Grunt, after becoming obsessed with the concept of dueling, Homer goes around challenging just about everyone in Springfield until he crosses the rich Texan, who actually accepts Homer's duel. Terrified, he flees to his childhood farmstead and decides to begin life anew as a rural farmer. But after having some trouble growing anything, he asks Lenny and Carl for a little plutonium and he kickstarts a crop he calls tobacco, a rancid combination of tobacco and tomatoes. Now the joke here obviously is that is disgusting and no one in their right mind would ever want to eat that, but never underestimate a dedicated fan base, because in 2003, scientist Rob Barr wanted to grow his own tobacco, and the absolute madman actually did it. He claims what he initially grew he thinks would have been completely inedible and lethal for humans to eat. Why did he do this? Well, the answer is honestly a lot more earnest than you might think. He's just a massive fan of The Simpsons, and this episode was one of his all-time favorites. He loved the anti-smoking message, and he was curious if a dumb pun was possible to grow into a real plant, and it totally was. He even sent off one of his tobacco plants to the writing team responsible for the episode, and as a reward, he was even brought on to do DVD commentary of the episode after growing it, elevating himself to Simpsons superfan status. And I cannot imagine that they tasted good. Number 2, the NSA, and Tom Hanks a little bit. Okay, take your brain back to 2007. Remember the Simpsons movie? Absolute classic. Basically, just 2 hours of The Simpsons on fire. Some of the best jokes they've ever had, taking the show we love to its biggest extremes. After Springfield's toxic waste problem becomes too much to bear on the rest of the country, President Schwarzenegger, and don't worry, that's not the prediction, decides that the best solution is to place a big glass dome over the city of Springfield to contain the problem. The Simpsons escape and find themselves on the run. Now, funny enough, in this scene, Bart takes a dig at Disney, wearing a bra on his head to look like Mickey Mouse, and saying he's the symbol of an evil corporate overlord. If only he knew. Marge is talking to Lisa about how they need to get to Seattle to tell everyone of the plot to destroy Springfield, and Lisa shushes her mom, warning her not to speak so loudly because people could be listening in. Well, Marge reassures her that no one is listening, until it's revealed that a dummy conductor has been listening and broadcasting the entire conversation to the NSA. Now, government surveillance was already a pretty popular conspiracy around the time the movie was made, but after the revelations of 2013, when it came out that the NSA was in fact doing that exact thing on the general population, a funny joke now seems prophetic. There's another prediction in the Simpsons movie that matches up pretty amusingly well with our real world. Near the end of the film, Tom Hanks films a promotional video for the US government and says, "The US government has lost its credibility, so it's borrowing some of mine." Pretty funny joke featuring America's dad. But then, in 2022, this basically happened like for actual real, when the current administration ran an anniversary campaign ad featuring Tom Hanks narrating the events of the first year of the Biden administration. Everyone raced to Twitter to comment that, yep, Simpsons did it first. The Simpsons had hit the nail on the head once again. Number 1, Siegfried and Roy. Now, some of our younger viewers might not even have any idea who these guys are. Maybe you're like me and you kinda know who they are through pop culture osmosis more than you do as real icons. Most specifically, The Simpsons. The season 5 episode, Springfield with a $, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Legalized Gambling, centers around Mr. Burns' plan to dominate Springfield's wharf after the town legalizes gambling in a way to revitalize its economy. It's probably a top 5 episode for me. There's just so many good bits in this one. From Homer singing about Marge's gambling demon to Mr. Burns going all Howard Hughes with the Spruce Moose and Homer's hilariously bad Florida costume for Lisa, and the Siegfried and Roy parody, Gunther and Ernst. The pair of German performers are a clear-as-day stand-in for Siegfried and Roy, the famous Las Vegas big cat performing duo. Now, in the episode, Gunther and Ernst joke that their tiger, Anastasia, loves her new life in show business compared to the wilds of the jungle. And we get a quick flash cut to Anastasia sleeping happily before she's apprehended by the duo. The scene cuts back and Anastasia sicks herself on the duo, tearing them apart. It was a pretty quick throwaway joke at the expense of 2 very minor Simpsons side characters, but in 2003 it became unfortunately tragic when an extremely similar incident would happen to the real-life inspiration. During a show, a tiger manticore attacked Roy critically, leaving him with a stroke and unable to ever perform again. No word on if the real duo ever saw the Simpsons episode. Now, the writing team for the episode commented on the unfortunate coincidence, saying they had no idea that it would ever actually happen, but stated that it was bound to happen eventually. As it stands, it's now a bit of a lip-biting moment in an otherwise absolutely classic episode.
Number 5 on this list is the Greek financial crisis. Greece, one of the most beautiful places in the world. A destination on pretty much all of our vacation lists, I think. Back in 2015, it got a whole lot cheaper for us to go there if we wanted to as well, because the Greek economy basically completely collapsed. Now, Greece for a while had been looking like they were in trouble monetarily speaking, but in 2015, 2015, it all came crashing down. Investopedia says, in 2015, Greece defaulted on its debt. While some said Greece simply fell into arrears, its missed payment of 1.6 billion euros to the International Monetary Fund was the first time in history a developed nation has missed such a payment. So that was a really bad thing to happen and basically meant that Greece was bankrupt. Millions of Greek citizens lost their jobs during this time. It was also a time where a lot of Greek people were leaving the country because they simply couldn't get any jobs in Greece. Well, believe it or not, an issue as complex and devastating as this one was predicted by The Simpsons. Or at least it was predicted to some extent. NME writes, the financial crisis in Greece rumbled on in 2015, hogging headlines for weeks, but the US show saw things going awry years before. Just witness this small subtle gag in the 2013 episode Politically Inept with Homer Simpson. As Springfield's most lovable buffoon is being interviewed on TV, a news ticker flashes on screen below with the headline, Europe puts Greece on eBay. So it's not a direct prediction stating that the entire country's economy is going to fall apart, but putting a country on eBay paints a pretty clear picture, I'd say. Number 4 on this list is the three-eyed fish. Three-eyed fish, not really something that I think anybody wants to see. Kinda something that you would expect to be swimming around Dr. Frankenstein's aquarium if he ever had one. Well, The Simpsons took it a step further. NME says, in a 1990 episode, Bart catches a mutated three-eyed fish in the local river, a nod to the pollutant effects of the town's nuclear power plant. Over 20 years later, in 2011, a real-life fish and practically a dead ringer for its cartoon counterpart was discovered in an Argentinian reservoir located near a nuclear facility. Now, there are a number of reasons why nuclear power has some question marks associated with it, but like, this is a major one right here. Literally a three-eyed fish, guys. And that's just one of the fish that we've seen. Think about how many other fish that are waiting to be found down there that have like legs growing out of them and stuff like that. It also makes you think about some of the horrible disasters that we've seen from power plants like this before. Obviously, Chernobyl is the one that comes to mind. If this fish happened to have this happen to it by just being around a plant, then think about what happened to the animals near that disaster. Like, we could have had a full-on mutant creature roaming around that area and just have no idea about it. Hopefully The Simpsons don't predict any more mutant stuff, because I don't want to be doing a video about how they got that right as well. Number 3 on this list is robot librarians. There's been a large movement recently, a push I guess, about how robots or automated machines are going to be taking our jobs. 100 years ago, if you would have brought this up, people would have thought that you're crazy, but nowadays it's a real thing that's happening. In fact, it's already going on. Car manufacturers, for instance, an industry that used to have a ton of jobs for people 100 years ago, is almost all machine operated now. At the end of the day, they're just simply quicker, more efficient, less accident prone, and don't need to get paid hourly. These robots are taking all kinds of jobs other than just car manufacturers as well. The Simpsons, believe it or not, actually predicted one of them. NME says, another highlight from Lisa's wedding here, as Lisa's college librarian turns out to be an android and one who violently burst into flames too. There haven't been any blown circuit board disasters in Chicago yet, but in 2011 it was announced the city's new Joe Enrica Mansueto library would have a robotic librarian who'd helpfully retrieve books for you. You know, I always thought about librarians as having a human element to them, but I guess robots would know more about books than we would. I don't know though, still feels super weird and creepy to have a robot explain to you what a book is about or something. Also, literally taking human jobs right now. Like, if they can do a librarian's job, then why can't they do a teacher's job or a business person's job or my job? Ugh.
Number 5, Stonecutters and the Secret Order. Season 6 is up there as one of the best seasons of The Simpsons overall. Like, it was just banger after banger. Tons of classic episodes. You got the Who Shot Mr. Burns plotline, some of the best in the series. There's a bunch of season 6 episodes on this list, just to show how seminal it was. One of the more memorable ones is Homer the Great, where a downtrodden Homer feels he has no place in the world or higher meaning until he finds himself involved in a gentleman's club called the Stonecutters, a secret centuries-old order Homer finds himself at the center of when he is revealed to be the prophesized chosen one of the group. Now, as it turns out, the Stonecutters are far more than just a place for the guys to play dominoes and kick back. They're also a powerful clandestine lobby group pulling the strings behind the scenes. They're behind everything. They're rigging the Oscars, they bury the electric car, they keep Martians under wraps, and they find consistent work for 80s icon Steve Guttenberg. The Stonecutters are a fairly obvious stand-in for various conspiracy theories like the Freemasons or the Illuminati, and if you believe the conspiracies, and I bet you do because you're watching these videos, allegedly they run the world behind the scenes. It's always rumored and long thought that they're controlling everything from the shadows. Could the Simpsons writers be letting the public know the truth of these sinister dealings? How these organizations work? Could Homer's secret monkey society be pulling the strings? Now, of course, if I was in a secret cabal that had made the world into my puppets, one of the first things I would do is discredit all the theories about my organization by, putting them in episodes of a beloved animated comedy show, making it seem like you'd have to be nuts to believe in that sort of thing. But that's just what I would do if I was part of a secret order controlling things. And if you're looking for more conspiracies, theories about beloved shows from your childhood, we have got plenty of that. Click through Top 5 Scary and I'm sure you'll find something worth shrieking at. Stay subscribed, stay scared, but most importantly, keep watching this video right now because we got way more weird Simpsons predictions coming up for you right after this. Number 4, super realistic holograms. The Simpsons has been going on for so long that their episodes that were once in the past are now set in the future. Iconic Lisa's wedding episode, by the way, another season 6 episode. That episode's future flash forward took place in 2010. Very funny to think about that now when they say Homer was a child, he was a child in the 90s. I'm not ready for him to age up for a few years to be a 2000s kid. Anyway, it's just funny seeing what they thought the future was going to look like and how we keep surpassing those things, and we'll see where it goes from there. Eventually, The Simpsons started doing a little mini story arc of sorts with their future flash forward episodes, and one of them is in the episode Holidays of Future Past from the series' 23rd season. So I could probably say anything happened in this episode. I doubt anybody's still watching then. I'm getting off topic here. Bart is down on his luck, and as one could probably expect, he's still living under the thumb of Principal Skinner, who's now Landlord Skinner at the Springfield Elementary Loft. Classrooms getting converted into apartments is depressing, but not really the scary prediction we're going for here. It's when Bart's watching Itchy and Scratchy. Instead of it being an animated show, it is now a 3D hologram that seems like it physically exists within the environment. It's a tangible thing. It's even splattering all over the walls behind on what used to be the chalkboard Bart was writing on every day. Now, holograms are already getting pretty out there in terms of technological advancements. Our man Homer himself was even a hologram, joining his father Matt Groening up on stage at Comic-Con one year. And I think it's possible that in the eventual dark future, we'll have holograms that exist as real physical objects you can touch, interact with, and I wouldn't be surprised if we started to see hologram TV shows. Hologram The Simpsons would be a lot of fun. Hologram South Park, I don't know if I'd let that into my home. I'm not 100% confident about that. I do suspect though, if there was holograms that you could touch and interact with, we would never see anybody going outside again, ever, if that happens. Number 3, mind controlling in music. In season 12, all the way back in 2001, crazy how those episodes now seem like the really old ones. We got an episode called New Kids on the Block, which saw Bart and his friends Milhouse and Ralph and his sometimes friend, sometimes bully Nelson, getting recruited to become the hottest boy band in Springfield. I don't know why, this one was always one of my favorites as a youngster. I think I just liked them singing. In the episode, a producer named LT Smash catches wind of one of Bart's pranks and is instantly enamored with his antics and signs him up to be the new face of his boy band party posse. Doesn't matter that the kids can't sing, they're all auto-tuned using NASA voice-changing technology. The boys end up having a smash hit single, a patriotic anthem called Drop da Bomb, a catchy song about how awesome the US forces are. But it's his chorus that really sticks out. They got these little belly dancers singing Ivan et Niage, and it gets stuck in your head easily, but it's a covert message. It's just join the Navy backwards, and that's still stuck in my head all to this day, so even as joke propaganda, that's really wormed its way into my brain. It turns out that LT Smash was never a record producer. He's Lieutenant Smash, and the whole boy band is just a convoluted scheme to get people to subconsciously want to join the Navy. I'm pretty sure the Village People did a similar thing, and with the YMCA. The idea of music being used as a secretive tool to sway the public secretly has been a very popular conspiracy theory for years, with some believing, rap and hip-hop are Illuminati puppets for mind control or world domination. I know it would certainly explain how much Lil Nas X's music gets stuck in my head. Industry baby, industry plant, maybe, by the Stonecutters even. This sort of thing really isn't that far off, to be honest, from all the wild predictions on this list so far. Using media to sway public opinion for propaganda is way more commonplace than I think any of us really realize. I mean, just last year, the film Top Gun Maverick, hugely popular movie, everybody saw it, contained this very very subliminal message throughout the script where every time you saw a fighter jet flying around with sweet 80s music, you thought, wow, flying a plane would be so cool. I should fly a plane for the US Air Force. It's just crazy how subliminal they do that sort of stuff. Number 2, sentient robots. You know, besides The Simpsons, one of my all-time favorite TV shows is HBO's Westworld. Well, at least the first 2 seasons. I don't really want to talk about what happened to Westworld. Deserve better. Isn't it sad when a great show lives past its prime and it seems like the original magic is long gone, but the characters keep moving forward, tired like zombies? Anyway, speaking of The Simpsons, in another season 6 classic episode, I told ya, Itchy and Scratchy Land, Lisa and Bart egg the family to take them to Itchy and Scratchy Land, a Disney World parody with state-of-the-art animatronics of the most beloved violent cat and mouse duo. Bart and Homer end up getting themselves involved in all sorts of trouble, tormenting the mascots and wreaking havoc around the park, and it's not long before this Disney World parody shifts to a Westworld parody. The movie. The show wasn't out just yet. The robots go haywire, attacking everybody, no longer able to distinguish friend from foe. Funny enough, this isn't even the only Westworld parody on the show. Very recently, the last Treehouse of Horror was a parody of the HBO show, revealing that the entire show was actually the product of a highly immersive amusement park. Now, we're not quite there yet. Sadly, we're not quite at the level of technology where you can go to a theme park staffed by interactable robots. I know this because if there was, I would never spend a second anywhere but there. But we are really getting there. In 2020, South Korea saw the opening of the Jeongnam Masan Robot Land, the world's first totally robot-themed amusement park. Now, the robots at this amusement park, they look pretty cute, all things considered, because I guess, you know, you're not gonna scare them right away. But that's because they're luring you into a false sense of security. All it takes is one robot snapping after having the last bit of ice cream smeared across its lens and rising up against its human overlords, and we get a full-scale rebellion on our hands, and The Simpsons called it first. I, for one, welcome our new robot overlords. And a quick aside, if they ever made a cowboy robot amusement park, I would actually be so nice to the cowboy robots, and I would never do anything bad to them, ever. Number 1, zombies. You know, you would be surprised how often in the futuristic Simpsons episodes that it's suggested that zombies are going to be a serious problem at some point. I didn't know how many modern episodes of The Simpsons have these like flash forward timelines. I haven't seen anything past season 12 really, but it's enough that it's starting to make me just a little bit suspicious. This comes up like genuinely more than you think it would. Clearly, someone in the writer's room at The Simpsons had a pretty firm belief that this is how society's going to end. Now, it could just be because The Walking Dead is very popular, and we as a people love zombies in our pop culture, guilty as charged. But really, it just shows up enough that I felt like I had to bring it up. In 2 separate episodes showing possible visions of The Simpsons' future, we're told there's like a low-level zombie apocalypse going on. I wouldn't give this too much weight normally, but The Simpsons has been right about enough stuff that I think, I don't know, it's just something we should consider, at least something to hear out. The ending of Homer Goes to Prep School, after Homer sees that society would end up surviving a total collapse, the episode ends with a shot of a meteor with zombies coming to Springfield. And this seems like this might be like a little offhanded joke, but it might be canon because then in the episode, Days of Future, again in the future timeline, zombies are part of society, with Lisa working at a charity looking after the undead.
Coming at number 5, we've got a dolphin uprising. Kinda like in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but much more violent. No musical numbers, no thanking for all the fish, no peaceful skedaddling off planet Earth. These dolphins are out for blood. It makes sense though. We've known for a while now that dolphins are incredibly smart creatures and that they've got their own social order and recreational activities. Why wouldn't they rise from the sea one day to take the land that we've squandered? In the Treehouse of Horror segment known as Night of the Dolphin, Lisa takes pity on a dolphin being held at a SeaWorld-like marine park. After setting poor Snorky free, it becomes apparent that he was king of the dolphins and didn't much enjoy being forced to do tricks for the entertainment of humans. So the dolphin rallies up his dolphin pals and starts a siege on Springfield. At first, the dolphin-inflicted casualties are ignored or blamed on other easy targets like rowdy teenagers. Where have we seen that before? Then it's a full-on assault on the town with dolphins tearing through people like heat-seeking missiles through toaster ovens. Apparently dolphins used to live on land in this scenario, but we'll ignore that bit for now. The dolphins win the fight against the humans surprisingly easily, forcing humanity back into the sea. Even though some of the folks with hearts more prone to bleeding do their best to assist the dolphins when they encounter human refuse, like say a 6-pack ring over the snout, the dolphins push on relentlessly. Looking at this gag, you can pull out out a few predictions. 1. SeaWorld and other parks were doomed to fail because of the cruel conditions their show animals lived in. 2. We've goofed up the ocean to a point that a lot of creatures can't live there anymore. And 3. The damage we've done and the cruelty we've enacted will come back to bite us in the butt. I'd say this Halloween special was spot on, even if it was a little far-fetched when it came to dolphin warfare. Hell, this one aired way before Blackfish was making headlines. Whoever wrote it knew it was only a matter of time before people clued into how awful aquatic theme parks were. Coming in at number 4, we've got a plant life takeover. Here's another spin on the environmental disaster turned end of humanity tale. Instead of aquatic life rising up, this time it's foliage. The greens are coming to get us, and honestly, it's about time. We've been wreaking havoc on our natural environment for long enough. Let's give the plants a chance. In this episode, we have a more organic take on Invasion of the Body Snatchers, known as Invasion of the Pod-y Snatchers. Oh boy. This is another segment from a Treehouse of Horror episode. Do you sense a theme here? What channel is this again? After a weird message from an off-brand Apple CEO, the people of Earth are treated to a new piece of information. The technocrats are actually aliens with one goal: turn the people of Earth into plants. So after a new tech update, all sorts of spores are fired towards Earth and start to take over people's bodies. A lot of people's bodies take on new forms based on their personalities too. Anyone with a phone or a tablet or any other piece of tech gets hit first with some goofy social commentary on being obsessed with devices crammed in there. But this prediction seems to be the gift that keeps on giving. Every time a new type of tech comes out and every time a new app is developed, folks keep claiming that people get addicted and don't care about anything else. However, we've kind of gotten used to embodying that over the past couple decades, with more of our lives taking place in digital spaces than ever before. Folks are indeed super reliant on their phones, laptops, and tablets, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. And while it's not likely that we're all going to turn into plant creatures in the near future, we might start to see more physical changes as we become more and more reliant on technology. Working from home for extended periods of time might cause us to develop poor posture and exercise less. Less sunlight too. Folks are so used to their devices that they're always looking for their next hit, even if it doesn't really make sense to do so. These psychological changes likely lead to physical ones over time. It's not the most creative or original prediction / social commentary, but The Simpsons isn't wrong in saying that folks getting too involved in their devices will cause long-term changes down the road. Coming in at number 3, France bombs America. Really? France? You heard it here first, folks. Looking at the classic Treehouse of Horror segment Omega Man, we get to see an apocalyptic vision of the future caused by some less than deft political maneuvering. Mayor Quimby makes a raunchy comment about frogs' legs, which makes folks worry that France might lash out. And guess what? They do. Because of an ill-advised sentence spoken by a big dumb politician, things went real sideways real fast. Homer survives while shopping for fallout shelters and emerges into a world full of corpses and mutants. After a day of gallivanting around in a mostly empty world, he discovers that his family survived the blast thanks to all of the lead paint in their house. Classic. So watch out for any really questionable political moments over the next little while, because even the most innocuous phrase could cause a nation to lose it. We've been preparing for this for years. What is modern politics if not trying to attract as many eyes as possible regardless of the consequences? Hopefully France doesn't decide that the nuclear option is the best one, but hey, if they do, I'll understand. Coming in at number 2, hoax gone wrong. We've all heard about the first time War of the Worlds was broadcast, right? It was a faux live radio broadcast so effective that it caused mass panic all over the place. This tale of alien invasion made folks so afraid they ran screaming into the streets. Interestingly enough, the BBC pulled off a similar hoax years later with Ghostwatch, but with less mass panic and more frantic calls to the headquarters. Back to the first hoax though, the Simpsons put a spin on the famous broadcast by reenacting the original panic. An alien invasion radio show went on the air and everyone lost it. However, after they discovered that it was all a joke, they were pissed. Claiming they'd never be tricked again, the citizens of old-timey Springfield vowed to ignore any and all alien invasion information from then on. Famous aliens Kang and Kodos picked up on this and decided it was time for an invasion. And then nobody believed it was actually happening. Like the boy who cried wolf on a whole other level. It just seems like human nature at this point, now doesn't it? Folks believing anything they're presented with immediately and without question, followed by a whole bunch of ignoring research, precedent, and common sense? With all the hoax hoaxes floating around the past few years, I wouldn't be surprised if we ignored something big and important just because in the future. So be on the lookout for a major social issue, catastrophic structural collapse, or additional viral infection. Folks will be so used to ignoring what's going on around them, it'll cause some major problems and no one will do anything about it. And finally at number 1, we've got no choice. We're already here. They predicted it, and now it's gonna happen every year forever until the inevitable collapse of society. Honestly, it couldn't come any faster at this point. Western society is predicated on the ideals of freedom and choice, but those are just illusions for the common folk, right? In the Treehouse of Horror segment Citizen Kang, Homer stumbles upon the alien-fueled plot to body snatch the 2 presidential candidates, making the election kind of a moot point. Regardless of who you vote for and who they say they are, you're really getting more or less the same thing in the end. Sure, they might look different and say different things, but what really changes? Plus, there's no alternative choice. Even if you didn't want to vote for the 2 squeaky clean politicians with all their pre-written speeches and platitudes about patriotism, what else is there to do? Politics. In the end, humanity is building weapons to fire at planets they don't even know the names of. Seems awfully familiar, doesn't it? With the way things have been going, it seems as though this will be the status quo moving forward too. You can vote for whoever you want in your local elections, but boy, does it ever feel like traditional politics keep new ideas from actually taking root.
Starting off this countdown, we have the robot takeover. At this point, artificial intelligence is playing a huge role in our lives. We got smart watches, speakers, homes, and fridges. It's crazy. That's not all. Scientists have created a number of super smart robots, like the robot police dog. Currently, some police departments have been testing out using a robotic dog. The New York Police Department was seen using one just last month, and it was received with a lot of backlash. Not only that, but another company made a child robot that is learning itself by interacting with humans and observing their behaviors. It then records this and then copies it back. And on top of that, hospitals are testing the use of surgery robots to help out. Here's the thing. The Simpsons, in a number of episodes, have predicted a robot takeover. One of them being the episode titled Itchy and Scratchy Land, which was episode 4 in season 6. In this episode, large animatronic robots go haywire and cause mass destruction. They basically turn into killing machines, threatening the Simpsons' lives. Then there's the episode titled Them Robots, which is the 17th episode of season 23. In this episode, Mr. Burns replaces all of the power plant workers with robots. But this goes terribly wrong, and the robots start to turn on the community. So the Simpsons predicted that robots will take all of our jobs, but also that they will turn against us and try to wipe out the human race. Seriously, I could see this ending super badly for all of us. These robots are becoming smarter than us all. Moving on to number 3, we have the president's wife. This next prediction is going to send chills down your spine. So in season 14, episode 21 of The Simpsons, titled Bart of War, an interesting headline can be seen across the newspaper in one of the scenes. The newspaper headline reads, "President shoots his wife." What now? Now this episode came out in 2003. The president at the time was George W. Bush, and clearly he did not shoot his wife. So the headline hasn't come true yet. Maybe it wasn't Bush that they were referring to. Could 2022 be the year that this comes true? Should Jill Biden be concerned? Should we be concerned? Even if that headline was just meant as a joke, it's a pretty dark one. Let's just hope that Joe doesn't go crazy and shoot his wife. You know what? Let's just hope that no president ever does that. In our second spot, we have World War III. Another world war would be absolutely disastrous for a number of reasons, I'm sure you can imagine. But could 2022 be the year that another world war might break out? It might just be, according to The Simpsons. In the 1995 episode titled Lisa's Wedding, we dive 15 years into the future. From there, we see what it's like in the future. Now, in this episode, we see Homer and Lisa's fiance, Hugh, drinking at Moe's bar. In this scene, Moe realizes that Hugh is from England and mocks him by saying, and I quote, "We saved you in World War II." Now, it's what Hugh responds with that has sparked the interest of many individuals. He replies saying, "Yeah, well, we saved you in World War III." Great. So it may just be that another war is about to begin. Now, what makes this all worse is that this particular Simpsons episode was filled with predictions that have actually come true, like virtual reality games, FaceTime, and Apple Watches. This episode predicted all that and more, years before those things actually came out. So let's hope that this other prediction they made doesn't come true as well. Like, should we start building our doomsday bunkers or what? And in our number one spot, we have the disastrous asteroid. Just when you thought the predictions for 2022 couldn't get any worse, we have this one. A giant asteroid might come crashing down to Earth and kill us all. In the 14th episode of season 6 titled Bart's Comet, Bart discovers a comet that is headed straight towards Earth. They believe that the comet is going to destroy life as they know it. And guess what? NASA has reported that asteroids are coming closer and closer to Earth. Just this year, NASA was, and probably still is, tracking a giant asteroid traveling at around 28,000 miles per hour that's headed towards Earth's orbit. This asteroid is around 1,500 feet wide. Its impact could be very disastrous. Plus, we keep having these near misses and close calls. Let's hope that this prediction does not come true. Now, here's some good news, okay? The Simpsons episode ends with the comet being burnt up into little pieces, causing no harm to the Earth.
Number 5. Realistic holograms. In the episode Holidays of Future Past, we get another glimpse into the future timeline of the Simpsons family. Bart is living in the refurbished Springfield Elementary, which is now low-income housing, meaning Bart is still under the thumb of Principal Skinner, who's now Landlord Skinner of the lofts at Springfield Elementary. A little side prediction, I absolutely think this is going to happen. I definitely think people are going to live in decommissioned schools. You know, we're not going to need them anymore if we're all just downloading Wikipedia onto a USB into our consciousness. Okay, I'm getting sidetracked. Anyway, to pass the time, Bart is still into Itchy and Scratchy, except instead of watching it on TV, Bart watches it as a live projected hologram in front of him. Itchy and Scratchy then proceed to do exactly what they do best, which is scratch, bite, and inflict grievous bodily harm on one another, which then splatters all over the walls of Miss Krabappel's former classroom behind him. Now, hologram technology is already leaps and bounds, making incredible strides. I mean, in our lifetime, we've seen it go from science fiction to regular reality. The Tupac hologram blew our minds when we first saw it, still blows mine. We even saw Homer as a hologram actually making a surprise appearance at a Comic-Con a few years back with his father, Matt Groening. Now, the real development will be when we get holograms like shown in this episode, that you could interact with physically or could have an interaction with the environment around you, which I think is all kinds of scary. I mean, imagine if a hologram, digital light conjured, could touch you or grab you. Imagine the ramifications of that. Or don't, to be honest, because I actually don't really want to think about it. But if you do want something to think about, why not thinking about subscribing to Top 5 Scary? We got videos every single day for your viewing pleasure. Let's keep going. Number 4. Economic crash. Look, things aren't doing too great economy-wise lately. You tried to buy butter recently? A trip to the grocery store just isn't what it used to be. And maybe the Simpsons writing team knows more than they're letting on. In a recent-ish episode from the 24th season, Homer goes to prep school. Homer meets a new friend who's voiced by Tom Waits, bizarrely enough. The man overhears Homer at Moe's talking about how he doesn't think society could survive a collapse, and the man agrees with him and warns Homer that soon there'll be economic disaster, and the supermarkets will collapse, and the United States will come down with it. Homer insists that America can't fall because it's a strong empire like Rome. The man then pulls out an iPad and shows Homer an unspecified vague video with no dates that warn him of a vague impending apocalypse, which is more than enough to convince a simpleton like Homer to join their cult-like group of survivalist preppers, prepping for what they believe to be the inevitable collapse. Of course, this is a pretty real phenomenon. We all know about preppers by now. Preppers are a recognized group. There was that reality show for a while, so that's all very real. Whether or not there's an incoming collapse, and the supermarkets will be empty and we'll all be raiding, who's to say? I'm not an economist, I'm a YouTube host, so all I can say is that I've noticed butter is a lot more expensive than they usually are. In the end, Homer inadvertently triggers an event that causes a collapse in Springfield, but to his and the preppers' dismay, Springfield bounces back like nothing happens. So maybe we don't need to be worried. You know, in the event of a societal shutdown, as long as we have each other and a couple people remember some good jokes from The Simpsons, I think we could survive an apocalypse together. Number 3. Cloning blues. The Simpsons heads towards the future fairly often in the modern seasons these days. I didn't know that. I guess once you've been on for 34 years, you're gonna have to start inching towards the future eventually. Now, in previous episodes set in the near future, like the classics Lisa's Wedding or Bart to the Future, they've been surprisingly bang on with their predictions. I'm sure we all know about they make a joke about President Trump embark to the future, but also some pretty smaller stuff here and there, like FaceTime being the primary method of communicating in the future. Well, the 18th episode of season 25, Days of Future Future, takes us back to the future Simpsons timeline. The episode shows us a grim fate, Homer's death. The family is devastated until Homer is swiftly cloned and replaced, memories intact. Of course, Homer being Homer, this new Homer does not last very long, and his clones have to be replaced like batteries in a smoke detector, and he ends up going through Dr. Frink's entire supply of clone bodies in a matter of days. Eventually, Homer's consciousness is given over to a robotic body, kinda a la Westworld. Now obviously this technology is pretty fantastical, and I would wager we're definitely a few years off, and at the very least before we'll see a human being stepping out of a test tube with their memories intact and ready to go face the world. But I think it's more likely coming soon than it is later. Number 2. Journey to Mars. Look, eventually we're gonna have to leave this planet behind, you know? It had a good run, can't deny that, but someday we gotta just move on, you know? It's the nature of humanity, exploring beyond the final frontier. In the 16th episode of season 27, we get a possible glimpse into this, with the episode featuring Marge and Lisa volunteering to be some of humanity's first pioneers into space, volunteering to go live on Mars. In the episode, a private company called Exploration Inc. is projecting to send people into space to colonize the third rock from the sun by the year 2026 and are looking for the first colonists. Marge learns during the training period that much of the skills they're looking for are similar to housework, one of Marge's favorite activities, leading her to become the perfect candidate, irritating Lisa, who wanted to be the first person on Mars. In the end, the two of them end up living there by 2050. Now, in the real world, going to Mars is a massive goal for the private company SpaceX, the other company that the CEO of Twitter runs. In the past, they've speculated that they would have people reaching Mars by now, but have pushed back a bit on that deadline. Their most recent estimations claim that by 2029, SpaceX will be sending out the first manned flights to the Red Planet to check it out. Will we get there by then? Honestly, I can see it happening. I think that's another one where we're inching closer with each passing day. The only question now is who will get there first, us or the Simpsons in 2026. That's the deadline we've got to meet or beat. And number 1, zombies. This one honestly came up a lot more than I think it would as I was looking for Simpsons predictions. Somebody in the writer's room has a very firm belief that this is how society is going to end. Now, it could just be because The Walking Dead has been really popular for the last 10 years and we as a people love zombies in our pop culture. But it shows up enough times in Simpsons future episodes that I thought it was worth noting. It's worth noting in 2 different episodes on this list even. You know, the ones that give us a look into the Simpsons canon, they both reference a zombie apocalypse. In the ending of Homer Goes to Prep School, after Homer sees that society would survive a collapse, at the end of the episode we see a shot of a meteor with zombies coming to Springfield. In fact, it's almost lightly implied that in the Simpsons universe there was kind of a low-grade zombie apocalypse. Because then, in the episode Days of Future Future, zombies seem to be just part of society, with Lisa working at a soup kitchen looking after the undead. Is this a glimpse into a dark future? I honestly think the way they treat zombies in The Simpsons is more or less how we deal with zombies. I don't think we'd have a full-blown Walking Dead thing. Maybe that would happen for a couple of weeks, but honestly I think we just work around it. I think you'd see zombies working minimum wage jobs. I think they'd be Uber Eats couriers or just like hanging out on the streets. I'm not afraid of seeing a shell of someone's former self shambling around as a corpse. I hope The Simpsons never ends, if nothing else, so they can always be around to predict the future.
Number 5, music mind control. So in a 2001 episode of The Simpsons, Bart and his friends form a new band that unwittingly becomes part of a psychological operations project by the Navy Department. The band's purpose is to disseminate subliminal messages to young folks through their music, and their most popular track in this episode is titled Drop Da Explosive, you know, with the beat. Now, as we know, The Simpsons has gained quite the reputation for predicting future events, so some people speculate that the portrayal of a psyops project involving subliminal messages in music might not be entirely far-fetched. We all remember Josie and the Pussycats, right? That was happening there. The concept raises questions about the power of music and its potential impact on shaping beliefs and behaviors, echoing concerns that have been expressed over the years about the influence of media, including music, on young minds. Research on the impact of music on individuals has yielded mixed findings. While some studies suggest that music can influence mood, behavior, and even cognitive abilities, the idea of subliminal messages in music having a significant and lasting effect is widely debated within the scientific community. Even the concept of subliminal messaging itself is controversial, with limited evidence supporting its efficiency in the real world. The idea that, like hip-hop lyrics in particular, may have a brainwashing effect has been a topic of discussion amongst various groups. Some folks argue that certain lyrics perpetuate negative stereotypes and glamorize harmful harmful behaviors, potentially influencing vulnerable individuals. On the other hand, most hip-hop creations emphasize artistic expression, storytelling, and of course, cultural significance, challenging the notion of a direct link between lyrics and behavioral outcomes. This episode from '01 taps into the cultural fascination with the potential influence of music on individuals, and definitely leaves us curious about whether or not this is something we may see in the near future. Once again, I repeat, Josie and the Pussycats did it as well. Number 4, suppression of green energy. So in episode 582, the character of Lisa creates a solar-powered car for the alternative energy derby, but her vehicle's demise occurs when the Duff blimp obstructs the sun, raising questions about corporate interests hindering the advancement of green energy. Concerns about corporations impeding the popularity of green energy are obviously not fictional. In reality, several industries have displayed interest in maintaining the status quo of non-renewable energy sources for their own monetary gain. Let's just take, fossil fuel companies for instance. They thrive on the continued consumption of oil, gas, and coal. The shift towards green energy would jeopardize their dominance in the market, leading to corporate resistance against widespread adoption in the general population. Major automotive companies, invested heavily in traditional combustion engine technologies, and the rise of electric vehicles poses a direct threat to their established market share and profitability. As green energy gains momentum, some of these corporations may resist the transition in a selfish attempt to protect their existing business models. Utility companies reliant on conventional power generation methods could also oppose widespread adoptions of renewable energy. The anti-monetary nature of renewable sources like solar and wind threatens the power distribution systems they have long controlled and dominated. This potential loss of control and revenue could motivate these companies to resist the transition to green energy. As always, political factors play a role in hindering the growth of, green energy. Some governments have historically maintained close ties with fossil fuel industries, often influencing policies that favor non-renewable energy sources. Pipelines that destroy ecosystems in people's homes? The power and financial contributions of these industries further complicate the possible transition to greener energy landscapes. The episode from The Simpsons may simply be a humorous take on the potential influence of corporate interests in, impeding the progress of green energy, but sadly, in reality, industries such as fossil fuels, automotive, and utilities have financial and structural reasons to resist the widespread adoption of renewable energy sources. So yeah, not too far-fetched in my opinion. Personally, I've always said the reason we don't have flying cars is because, that would take away a lot of money from big corporations, and big corporations don't like losing money. We've all been watching the strikes this year, right? Number 3, robot takeover. In 2012, The Simpsons made a prediction about mass automation. A fancy way of saying they depicted a world where robots replaced human workers, which is a scenario that seems increasingly plausible with every day that passes. Also, back in 1994, in an episode titled Itchy and Scratchy Land, the show ventured into the realm of AI. The Simpson family visited a theme park staffed with robots that ultimately malfunction, leading to a scary and chaotic outcome. This fictional portrayal of a robot uprising bears an eerie resemblance to the concerns raised by a man who is often hailed as the father of artificial intelligence. And yes, this man has a name, but I can only pronounce it once. Schmidhuber. He anticipates that AI superintelligence will usher in rapid technological advancements, bringing about profound transformations in society within a mere 30 years. And we're seeing AI more and more these days. His prediction aligns with the current trajectory of AI development. So as technology continues to evolve, urges society to navigate the evolving landscape of technology with extreme caution. Signs of robotic automation are already prevalent, supporting The Simpsons' prophetic vision. Machines and algorithms are assuming roles traditionally held by humans, sparking debates about the future of manual human work. The fear of job displacement due to automation is mirroring the anxieties portrayed, in the animated series. Discussions about AI ethics and regulation are gaining traction. Policymakers and experts grapple with the challenge of striking a balance between innovation and the responsible deployment of AI. The need for proactive measures to manage the potential risks associated with unchecked technological growth is pretty clear. The Simpsons foresaw a world where automation disrupts the workforce, and we're living in a world where this notion is becoming more and more obvious each day. Robots causing displacement in 2024? Not too far off. Once again, do we all remember iRobot? Did that not teach you anything? Other than, Alan Tudyk is severely underrated. Number 2, everything. So in this episode's futuristic setting, Homer and Marge indulge in virtual fudge through VR glasses and feeding tubes. Despite the virtual nature and the promise of no calories, Homer's love for junk food remains unabated. In a bizarre turn of events, Mr. Burns hires the Simpsons to become his live-in virtual reality family. However, an interesting twist unfolds as Homer is deliberately excluded from this virtual family setup, allowing Mr. Burns to assume the role of the father. Left in solitude, Homer discovers a new companion in Julia, his girl next door neighbor, who shares his habits and preferences in eating, drinking, and thinking. Royal Caribbean is exploring the integration of virtual reality into the dining experience for cruise line guests. The concept involves transporting diners to different settings with each bite, offering a unique and immersive culinary journey. Cornell University's food scientists have delved into the realm of virtual reality as well, discovering that consuming cheese in a pleasant VR environment enhances the overall taste experience. So this narrative in The Simpsons reflects a speculation about the direction in which our world might be heading. The show imagines a future where virtual reality infiltrates everyday life, not only in entertainment and dining, but also in the dynamics of personal relationships. The example of a virtual family for hire mirrors the newfound reliance on technology for social interactions, and the blurring lines between reality and simulation. The exploration of VR-enhanced dining experiences by real-world entities like Royal Caribbean aligns with the show's previously mirrored satirical take on technological advancements. It highlights society's fascination with merging the virtual and physical realms, seeking to elevate mundane activities such as eating into otherworldly multisensory experiences. Which is just, I'm not gonna get into it. You don't need to hear me vent for like a million years and a half, but goodness gracious. Yes, The Simpsons mainly serves as a satirical mirror reflecting contemporary trends and societal obsessions. But with each passing year, their previous observations look a little less satirical and a lot more literal. Remember when they predicted that Disney was gonna own them? That one boggled my mind. Number 1, environmental disaster. So The Simpsons movie portrays an environmental catastrophe triggered by Homer Simpson's reckless disposal of pig waste into Springfield Lake, which exacerbates an already critical pollution situation. The event leads to a response from the president, who encapsulates the entire town of Springfield under a glass dome to contain the contamination. While the movie's plot takes an exaggerated and implausible turn, the underlying environmental concerns it raises do resonate with real-world issues. The film's premise parallels actual environmental crises, where water pollution has posed significant threats to communities and ecosystems globally. The dumping of pollutants into water bodies like Homer's careless act has led to severe consequences in various regions. The movie's exaggerated scenario, of course, serves as a satirical reflection of the potential severity of such pollution incidents, but it's becoming more uncanny. Instances of deadly levels of contaminated water are not confined to fiction. Numerous documented cases worldwide showcase the devastating impact of industrial and agricultural runoff, sewage discharges, and hazardous waste disposal on water quality. From toxic algae blooms to chemical contaminants, water pollution remains a pressing global concern with far-reaching ecological and public health implications. The concept of enclosing a town under a giant glass dome may seem far-fetched, but it prompts contemplation on the drastic measures that might be considered in response to escalating environmental crises. Communities facing extreme pollution levels often witness stringent containment measures. Though not as theatrical as a transparent dome, this isn't the phase. If you got that reference, I adore you. They may feel like that at times. Environmental regulations, water treatment plants, and cleanup efforts are often implemented to control the damage caused by pollution, emphasizing the importance of proactive measures opposed to reactive in safeguarding public health and ecosystems. As environmental challenges remain prominent, the film's exaggerated portrayal acts as a reminder of the urgent need for responsible environmental stewardship. Whether it's a contamination of water sources or broader issues such as climate change, the movie's underlying message aligns with the ongoing global discourse on the importance of sustainable practices and the consequences of failing to address environmental issues effectively, which isn't really being done. So 2024, environmental disaster, here we come. Yay.
Coming in number 5, we've got horse meat. A lot of shady stuff goes on in the food industry. One would hope that this kind of nonsense would be dealt with appropriately when it came to feeding children, but it's not always the case. I guess the whole feeding just children horse meat is more of a joke than anything, but check this out. Back in 1994, the 100th episode of The Simpsons aired, titled Sweet Seymour Skinner's Badass Song. It tells the tale of a woefully mismanaged public school. What else is new, right? Well, during all of the chaos where principals were fired, hired, refired, and rehired, we get a quick gag concerning some equine cuisine. Springfield Elementary's lunch lady tossed a lovely assortment of assorted horse parts, now with more testicles, into a pot to be turned into some sort of meal for the students, whatever that may be. That kind of joke has been long running, with many folks assuming that thanks to low budgets, schools have to resort to less than stellar foods. So, horse meat for the kids. However, one might think that corporations whose profitability relies on serving the food they advertise might think twice before serving horse meat in something that isn't labeled horse meat. Not quite the case. In 2013, almost 20 years after that episode of The Simpsons aired, there was a huge food-based scandal in Britain. Can you guess what kind of meat was found in all sorts of supposedly pure beef? You got it. Horse. And this wasn't just happening at dinky little school cafeterias or independent burger joints stationed near wharfs. We're talking about Taco Bell serving something that wasn't actually all beef. Which actually isn't that surprising, but still. Taco Bell, Bird's Eye, and Brakes all had products that claimed to be all beef but ended up having traces of horse meat throughout. Jeez Louise, that's not necessarily something you want to hear after scarfing down a beef skewer or a Crunchwrap Supreme. So a joke about cheaping out at the expense of the American school system actually turned out to be a pretty real situation where some corporations that should know better cheaped out. Way to go, team. Coming in at number 4, we've got mutant tomatoes, and not the teenage ninja kind. We're talking about nuclear crops here. Enormous, bulbous, strange growth-ridden plants you probably don't want to consume. But what if they're addictive and have major profit-reaping capabilities? What then? Let's start with the Simpsons story and then move on to what happened in the world after. In the episode E.I.E.I.D.O., Homer finds himself at the forefront of a potentially brand new industry, tobacco. After skipping town to avoid a duel with a gun-toting colonel, Homer and his family settle down at his dad's old farmhouse. He buys some tomato and tobacco seeds from Sneed's Seed and Feed, formerly Chuck's, and tosses them all over the property. After introducing some plutonium to the works, the two crops become one, producing a highly addictive plant known as tobacco. Part tomato, part tobacco, all despicable. The plutonium causes this stuff to grow even bigger than it would have otherwise, reaching extremely large sizes and causing anyone who eats some of it to become addicted. Sure, the taste is bad, but think about how relieved you'll feel after you eat one every hour for the rest of your life. It's probably better for you than smoking, too. The development of this habit-forming food causes a whole lot of other issues, including but not limited to corporate espionage, rampaging farm animals, and a helicopter crash. So what did this predict? Enormous, potentially dangerous crops spurred on by the introduction of nuclear waste. In 2013, a bunch of Japanese farmers started noticing that some of their crops were growing disproportionately large. In addition to their size, these crops also developed odd properties, like additional growths that didn't match the plant's usual shapes. All this strange stuff was happening relatively close to the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, where 2 years earlier a meltdown occurred. Now, these huge fruits and veggies aren't ironclad proof that the nuclear waste caused excess growth, but it definitely paints a vivid picture now, doesn't it? We'll see what other changes occur over the next little while, and maybe even see the development of a new tobacco-tomato hybrid. It would be a better way to wean off smoking rather than vaping, that's for sure. Coming in at number 3, boring VR tasks. Video games were supposed to transport us to far-off worlds full of colorful characters and exciting things to do, right? A vision of the future where anything is possible. You could be a pro athlete, fly around on a hoverboard, pilot insane spacecraft, and more. Well, that was what the vision of video games was. Most cartoons that featured gaming would have characters teleported inside the software, taking on the roles of player characters in all sorts of far-out scenarios. However, The Simpsons saw right past that era of camp and craziness and got right into the meat and potatoes of today's legendary activities. Some popular games out there don't require you to shoot 100 aliens or ride your horse into the abyss. Some are just farming simulators or walks through the woods. Hell, there are even truck driving and food planting and serving sims that you can play in VR. Folks had such lofty aspirations for virtual reality, from the fever-dreamy interpretation of Lawnmower Man to lunatic life sims. But here we are, with some not quite consumer-ready tech and a whole lot of mundane tasks made interesting by their virtual components. Maybe The Simpsons knew that life was only gonna get drearier, and good old-fashioned hard work would have more appeal than sitting in front of a spreadsheet all day. Would you rather trim a hedge on a sunny day or input data in a cubicle? The choice is yours. Coming in at number 2, Arnold Palmer. Now this one is a little morbid. I'm sure most folks out there know about the legendary refreshing beverage named after the equally legendary golfer. Half iced tea, half lemonade, the Arnold Palmer. Well, as it turns out, a joke made by the writers of The Simpsons lined up a little too well with a real-world event. During the premiere of the 28th season, titled Monty Burns' Fleeing Circus, Homer decides to load up a water gun with said famous beverage. When Marge asks what he's doing, he tells her that he's going to Arnold Palmer Lenny, implying that he would soak his pal in the liquid. Now, this doesn't seem all that freaky, right? A simple gag pulled by TV's favorite simple dad. The thing is, on the day the episode aired, the golfer Arnold Palmer passed away. Of course, this could be chalked up to sheer coincidence, but what are the odds that they scripted, voiced, animated, and aired that joke, and it ended up being on the same day as Palmer's unfortunate passing? The world works in mysterious ways, that's for sure. And finally, at number 1, Disney owns Fox. It's almost as if the writing was on the walls for years. We like to think we've got plenty of choice when it comes to the media we consume these days, but most IPs are owned by a constantly shrinking set of companies. But wow, has Disney Disney ever taken over a lot of stuff. And Fox was right on the money too, some 20 years before the merger actually went through. In the episode When You Dish Upon a Star, there's a quick visual gag where we see the 20th Century Fox logo in all of its resplendent glory, but there's a little addendum to it. Underneath the shiny gold letters, you can see that it is now a division of Walt Disney Co. Somebody saw the way entertainment companies were growing and predicted a buyout way ahead of time. I guess it only makes sense, but wow. An insidious collection of IPs to constantly market and remarket to the increasingly online demographics of tomorrow was predicted in the 90s. I doubt they would have seen the streaming revolution coming, but the way that Disney has always been protective of its image as well as immensely profitable kinda made this one a no-brainer. Although
Number 5, the Titan submersible. No doubt you have recently heard of the Titan sub and the tragedies surrounding it. I mean, it's pretty much the only story that's been in the news for the last 2 weeks, after it imploded in an attempt to carry passengers to the wreckage of the Titanic. Now, before we knew the exact extent of what had happened early in the story's development, many were very concerned about the vessel's oxygen supply, and for some, in classic Simpsons fashion, were convinced that the Simpsons might have eerily predicted the scenario with an unsettling accuracy. In the 2016 episode Simpson Tide, we follow Homer going on an expedition reuniting with what he thought was his long-lost father Mason, a millionaire explorer. The two of them go on an expedition underwater, searching for the treasure of a sunken ship in 2 little personal subs, similar to how 2 passengers on the fateful sub were a father and son, similar to the episode. Now, that's one thing. But what makes this kind of interesting is that this episode was produced by Mike Reiss, the long-running showrunner of The Simpsons, who also happened to be a passenger of the Titan submersible in the past, not just once, but 3 times. So it's entirely possible that this episode was inspired by his own experiences. Mike Reiss, infinitely braver person than me, been on the sub 3 different times, and said that they almost always lost communication. Recently, he spoke out about his experiences. Obviously, everybody wants to talk to him as he has been on this one thing that's dominating the headlines, and on BBC Breakfast recently, he shared saying he was not very optimistic about the missing passengers having been found alive, saying they knew what they were getting themselves into. Rice was quoted as saying, "I got on the sub and at the back of my mind was, well, I may never get off this thing. That's always with you. If it's down at the bottom, I don't know how anyone is going to be able to access it, much less bring it back up." Now, in the episode of The Simpsons, obviously Homer is fine because he's a cartoon character, but tragically, the passengers on the sub were not recovered. A very, very grave reminder of how scary undersea travel can be. And if you're looking for more videos of all things scary, unnatural, and unknown, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. We've got something freaky on just about everything you can think of. Simpsons predictions, Frankenstein's ghouls, you name it. Hit subscribe, make sure you ring that little bell as well so you don't miss a single thing, but do it at the end of this video because I got 4 more Simpsons predictions for you. Number 4, the Stonecutters. Coming up at our next point is going to be about the Stonecutters, the secret allegiance that runs Springfield. Now, season 6 has got to be one of the best seasons of The Simpsons out there. There are a ton of classic episodes. Got the Who Shot Mr. Burns plotline, but one of the more memorable episodes is Homer the Great, where a downtrodden Homer feels that he has no place in this world or higher meaning until he finds himself involved in a gentleman's club called the Stonecutters, a secret centuries-old order Homer finds himself at the center of when he is revealed to be the prophesized chosen one of the group. This obviously sounds incredibly similar to the very well-known Freemason organization. Stonecutter, Mason, Masons work with stones. Pretty easy to figure out what they're alluding to. Are the Simpsons writers trying to reveal something? As it turns out, the Stonecutters are far more than just a place for the guys to play dominoes and kick back. They're a clandestine lobby group pulling all the strings behind the scenes. The Stonecutters are behind everything. They rig the Oscars, they bury the electric car, they keep the Martians under wrap, and they find consistent work for 80s icon Steve Guttenberg. The Stonecutters are a good stand-in for any sort of conspiracy you believe. Freemasons, Illuminati, any New World Order can fit in nicely to this. The Stonecutters are a very obvious stand-in for various conspiracies like the Freemasons, the Illuminati, New World Order, and if you believe any of those conspiracies, and I bet you do if you watch these videos, allegedly they run the world behind the scenes. Always rumored and long thought that they're controlling everything from the shadows. Could the Simpsons writers be letting the public know about their sinister dealings? How these organizations work? Could Homer's secret society of monkeys from the end of the episode be pulling the strings? Maybe. Now, if I was a secret cabal that had made the world into my puppets, one of the first things I would do is discredit all the theories about my organization by putting them into episodes of a beloved animated comedy show, making it seem like you'd have to be an absolute kook to believe in it. But that's just what I would do if I was part of a very secret organization that was running the world. Not that I am, of course. Number 3, Siegfried and Roy. Now, some of our younger viewers might not have any idea who these guys are. Or maybe you're like me, and you know these guys more through parodies than you do as real icons, or you absorb all your pop culture through The Simpsons. In the season 5 episode Springfield, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Legalized Gambling, an absolute favorite of mine, Mr. Burns dominates Springfield's wharf after the town legalizes gambling in a way to revitalize its economy. This is a top 5 for me. You got Homer making fun of Marge's gambling addiction, being named Gambler, Mr. Burns going Howard Hughes, living alone, and Homer's hilariously bad Florida costume for Lisa. Oh, top tier episode. One of the better parts is Gunther and Ernst, the Siegfried and Roy parody. The pair of German performers who are a stand-in for Siegfried and Roy, the famous Las Vegas act featuring tigers. Now, in this episode, Gunther and Ernst joke that their tiger Anastasia loves her new life in show business compared to the wild of the jungle. We get a little flashback to Anastasia sleeping happily before she's apprehended by the duo. The scene then cuts back and Anastasia sicks herself on the duo, savagely tearing them apart. Very quick throwaway joke at the expense of two very minor Simpsons side characters, but in 2003, it would become kind of tragic when an extremely similar incident would happen to the duo. During a show, a tiger named Manticore attacked Roy critically, leaving him with a stroke and unable to ever perform again. No comment on whether or not the real duo ever saw the Simpsons episode. The writing team commented on the unfortunate coincidence, saying obviously they had no idea that that would ever happen, but they did state it was bound to happen eventually. As it stands, it's now a bit of a lip-biting moment that seems a little bit in poor taste in an otherwise absolutely hilarious episode. Number 2, an economic crash. Look, things are not doing too great economy-wise lately. I don't know where you live, but I bet it's not doing too great there. You tried to buy butter recently? Trip to the grocery store just ain't what it used to be. Maybe the Simpsons writing team knows more than they're letting on. In a recent-ish episode from the 24th season, Homer goes to prep school. Homer meets a new friend voiced by Tom Waits. Bizarrely enough, okay. The man overhears Homer talking about how he doesn't think society could survive a collapse, and the man agrees with him and warns Homer that soon there'll be an economic disaster and the supermarkets will collapse and the United States will fall too. Homer insists that America can't fall because it's a strong empire like Rome. The man then shows Homer an unspecified vague video with no dates or anything that warn him of a vague impending apocalypse. You've probably seen a lot of videos exactly like that on TikTok. Homer then joins their cult-like group of survivalist preppers, prepping for what they believe to be the inevitable apocalypse. Now, this is a very real phenomenon. Preppers are a recognized group. There was a whole reality show about them for a while, so that's all very real. Whether or not there's an incoming collapse, like immediately, well, who's to say? I'm not an economist, I'm just a YouTube host. So all I can say is that I've noticed butter and honey are a lot more expensive than they usually are, and those YouTube ad dollars ain't coming in the way they used to. In the end of the episode, Homer inadvertently triggers an event that causes a collapse in Springfield, but to his and the preppers' dismay, society bounces back like nothing happened. So maybe we don't need to be so worried. Society recovers. That's a beautiful message. As long as we have each other and a couple people remember some good jokes from The Simpsons, I think we'd survive an apocalypse. Although there was no electricity, I'm not really sure how we'd log into our Disney Plus accounts and stream the episodes. And I mean, if there was no electricity, you couldn't watch Top 5 Scary. So let's try to avoid any full-scale societal collapses for a bit then. I actually don't mind society so much. I don't think it's so bad. And number 1, the NSA and Tom Hanks. Take your brain all the way back to the summer of 2007, would you kindly? What a simpler time. Lincoln Park on the airwaves and The Simpsons movie in theaters. The Simpsons movie was a classic, basically just 2 hours of some of the best jokes the Simpsons writers ever had, taking the show we love to its biggest extremes. After Springfield's toxic waste problem becomes too much to bear on the rest of the country, President Schwarzenegger decides that the best solution is to place a big glass dome over the city of Springfield to contain the problem. The Simpsons escape and find themselves on the run all throughout the country, eventually finding themselves on a train. While they're on the train, funny enough, there's a little joke at Disney. Bart puts a bra on his head to look like Mickey Mouse and says he's the symbol of an evil corporate overlord. That's pretty funny because now, who owns The Simpsons again these days? Anyway, Marge is talking to Lisa about how they need to get to Seattle to tell everyone of the plot to destroy Springfield. And Lisa shushes her mom, warning her not to speak so loudly because people on the train could be listening. Marge reassures her that no one is listening until it's revealed that a dummy conductor, a robot conductor, has been listening and broadcasting everything to the NSA. Governments surveilling you at every moment has always been a popular conspiracy theory, but after the revelations of 2013, when it came out that the NSA was in fact doing this exact thing on the general American population, a funny joke now seems prophetic. There's another good prediction in the Simpsons movie that matches up pretty well with our world. Near the end of the film, Tom Hanks films a promotional video for the US government and says, "The US government has lost its credibility, so it's borrowing some of mine." It's a pretty funny joke from America's dad. But then in 2022, this pretty much happened for actual real when the current administration ran an anniversary campaign ad featuring Tom Hanks narrating the events of the first year of the Biden administration. Everyone raced to Twitter to comment that, yep, once again, The Simpsons hit the nail on the head. The Simpsons did it first.